Thanks so
Stephanie!
much for talking with me today.
I'm thrilled to be here. It was so nice of you to invite me.
In doing my research, I learned that you grew up in Nebraska, correct?
I sure did. Yes.
And my parents, my father's side and my grandparents all grew up in Nebraska.
You're kidding.
Yeah, in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I still have extended family in Adams. And so I have a special place in my heart for Nebraska. I feel like it is considered like a flyover state, but I love it. I had all of my summers there. I went there and visited, and it's just lovely people, small town vibe, but such a cool vibe too.
Yeah. It gets a bad rap. I think a lot of people are just like, oh, it's just a bunch of farmers out there, which is not the case.
No.
And Lincoln's fun, especially on game day. Go Big Red.
Yes.
It's a sea of red, but the people there are honestly just wonderful. My entire family, for the most part, lives there still.
Aww.
Small town called Hastings. Shout out to Hastings there. But it was a special place to grow up. It just wasn't a place for me to live.
Yeah. What was it like growing up there? And what was your family dynamic like?
It was great. It was, you don't know anything else as a kid. We have a pretty big family. So I grew up with all of my cousins and my aunts and uncles. And, it was sweet. It was, I dare say, innocent, We lived on a park, and so there was a lot of freedom. All the kids from the neighborhood would go play in the park by the water and the pond and swing and come back home when it was dark out. And, that was just life growing up. But you have to create your own excitement, so to speak. There's not a lot of entertainment, though my grandfather was really instrumental in bringing a lot of things to Hastings. There's a small liberal arts college, Hastings College, that's there, and he was on the board, and it was really important for him to give people access to things.
Wow.
He loved Europe. He loved New York. There was a big city soul in him, even though he's from Nebraska, and my grandmother too. And so he would negotiate somehow with artists. We had a Stradivari violin that came through. He had asked if they would travel it through and play it, and we had actresses come through and musicians. And so there was a lot of life that I feel like he brought to Hastings.
And you had that soul in you as well, that big city soul.
It was in there, yes. And I think because of him, he always said it was important to travel. He said, no matter what you do in life, explore as much as you can, because it will enrich you as a person and inform you as a person and what the world is really like. Because you can read about places, but until you've been there, you really don't know them.
Right. As a kid, did you want to go into the performing arts, liberal arts? What was it like growing up?
So I was that kid that wanted to be in everything. I couldn't sit still. So, and sports were a big part of Nebraska life.
Yes.
So I played basketball and volleyball, and I ran track, and not that I was excellent at any one of those, but I did. But then I was also in theater, and I was in the choirs, every choir I could get my hands on, and other organizations. So I kept myself quite busy, and I loved it. And I think my passion was always kind of in the performance side of things. I wanted to be on the Mickey Mouse Club, and my dad said, no way, you're not flying to Florida to try out for that, which was probably for the best, but it would have been around the time of Justin Timberlake and Christina Aguilera and Britney Spears. So that could have been interesting. But alas, it took me a little bit longer to figure that out.
And where did you go to school?
University of Kansas.
Okay.
I wanted to go really far from Nebraska, and I ended up one state over, but it was a great experience. I wanted something big. It's a huge school. And I felt like I wanted Division I a little bit for athletics and just the sheer volume of students, because I felt like that would broaden my horizons. And I didn't know anyone from Nebraska that was going to Kansas, and that's the way I wanted it. I wanted to meet new people.
Did you go there for sports?
I it wasn't necessarily sports. It was just the vastness of Kansas. And I was really interested in international business at the time. And I remember when I visited campus, there were Tibetan monks that were passing through. I don't know why they were there, but there was this like drum situation and this just, I was like, what is this place? This is amazing. This is very eye-opening and it's a beautiful campus. And I was like, I feel like I could see myself here. And so I went.
And what did you study? You laugh before you even tell that story.
Because people look at me and they're like, I'm sorry, what did you just say? Well, it was business, but I specialized in computer programming. So
okay.
I was going to be a programmer. I'm actually deep down a math and science geek.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't get that answer often.
I know, that's why people are. But my father, he's brilliant. And he was always into computers and programming. And he actually, for our family's company back in Nebraska, had and continues to help do all the information systems and create software for them, et cetera. So it was just around me as a kid. And it was a smart choice as far as getting a degree in that. But it's funny when I look back on it, I was so involved in so many other things. Like that was the studying side, but then the personal side, I was in acting classes and I was in the choirs there. I was part of Rock Chalk Review, which is this awesome thing that KU does, which is it's a theatrical experience basically. And two organizations pair up and they submit to be in a review. So you write a 15-minute musical and you submit it. And if you're accepted, then you have to perform it. And it raises money for charities. And so my junior year, I participated in my freshman year, and junior year, we submitted with I was in a sorority and we submitted with a fraternity and we got in. And so what we had to do was crazy. We had to write the musical. We had to write an original song. We had to choreograph it ourselves. We had to do set decorations, costumes, all of these things. And it's no wonder why I didn't do so great in econ that year. I was a little preoccupied. But that's the stuff I remember. And it's so funny because I was so focused. Like when I was getting out of college, I'm going to be a computer programmer. And I don't know that I was actually listening to my heart at that time.
Interesting.
But it was a valuable experience. And I love that I learned the sciences and math and I did enjoy it, but it just wasn't my passion.
When did you start listening to your heart?
I think so. After I graduated, I moved back to Hastings and I was living with my parents. And that's a tough thing to do after college and all that freedom for them too, and we're living under the same house. And I was helping my dad launch the e-commerce site for our family's company. And I loved working for my dad. He was actually a great boss, but I was so miserable doing what I was doing. And it was a combination of probably being in Nebraska again in those circumstances I mentioned, but it didn't feel like it was feeding me at all. And my dear friend Kelly, who was living in LA at the time, she went to KU with me and she said, "You're miserable. Get out of there." And this was 6 months after I graduated. So in December, I said, okay, I think this might happen. And then January, I moved out. But I remember walking downstairs and saying to my dad, and mom, but it was my dad that had the best reaction. I said, he's pouring a cup of coffee, doesn't miss a beat. I go, "Dad, I'm moving to LA." And he looks over at me and goes, "No, you're not." But I did. And, it was the best decision I think I could have made.
The art of the pivot.
Mm-hmm.
It's so common. It's so much more common than you think. The people that I talk to, rarely is it A, B, C, D, E.
Exactly.
So once you got out to Los Angeles, was that a culture shock to you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But I loved it at the same time. Kind of the same reason I loved KU for the vastness and so many people that I didn't know. I mean, that's like LA on steroids.
Right.
And it was exciting. And I remember, I was living in Crescent Heights and 3rd Street. So that area is really close to the Grove, which was just being built up at the time, and the farmer's market, and walking to all those fun shops and restaurants on 3rd Street. So I actually didn't have to be in my car as much as a lot of people to experience a good piece of LA. And I loved that there were so many things to see and do. And I didn't understand LA at all as far as like all of the neighborhoods. And, there's Little Armenia and Little Tokyo and Chinatown and all of these really fascinating subcultures within LA. And I remember I'd get the LA Weekly and I'd like highlight all the things I wanted to do that week. And it would have taken me a year to try and go see all those things. But I was so energized by it.
So where did you start? Because obviously you move out to Los Angeles. Did you get a side job? Where did you start in this business?
Yeah.
All the things.
It was it was wild. I floated around for a while. I was doing all sorts of weird things, just trying to get some money. And I landed at Blue Boutique for like a year, which was really fun actually too. Shout out to Gabby who hired me. And I wasn't a very good salesperson, but she had a lot of celebrities that would come in and she had beautiful clothes. And I spent most of my paycheck on clothes because I couldn't help myself. It was so fun, but it's kind of like a cool LA experience. But after a while, I was like, I need to do something. I need to figure something out. And so it occurred to me what my passion was, which was performance and entertainment, and thinking that I'm in the entertainment capital. Perhaps I should try and explore that. But I knew no one in the business. My uncles were kind of getting into it. They're writers, and I think they had just launched a show or sold a show there, and were beginning to move out to LA, but that wasn't happening. There wasn't any resources for me. So my bright idea was to figure out if there was a temp agency that was hiring out to entertainment companies, because, temp work is temporary and you would presumably float around. And I thought, oh, wow, I could see all of the different studios if they'd hire me on, and I could, for a while and get my feet wet and make connections and network. And so I found executive temps, Stacy and Ted Milner, who are lovely human beings who gave me a shot. There were cookies involved. I think I baked for Ted at one point because I just begged them to interview me, because they too were like, you don't have any experience. What are you going to do in these situations? You don't know anything about the entertainment industry. But really, when you're testing to be a temp, you have to go through like computer skills. And I was a programmer. So I flew through the speed tests and knowing Excel and PowerPoint and Word and all those things. So after the interview, I proved that I was, intelligent and could handle myself. And so they hired me to come in. And the next morning at 6:30 a.m., I got a call from Ted, and he said, all right, you're going to KCAL 9 today.
So what were you doing? What was your first day at KCAL 9 like?
Oh, gosh, it was terrifying. I remember the woman that was going on leave had brain cancer. Like, it was this crazy situation. And she was the assistant to the director of sales, to Marilyn Rangel. And Marilyn is a tough cookie. There's a reason why she was in her role, especially coming up as she did. It was very much a man's world when she was younger, and in the television industry, broadcast television industries in particular. And Marilyn was a riot, but I just kept my head down, and Christine, who unfortunately was going through the surgery, like kind of prepped me, and then off she went for months, and I had to assist Marilyn and figure it out. But besides being nervous and being intimidated by this woman who just exuded strength, she was fantastic, and the entire team was so welcoming to me, and they were fun and funny and loved what they did. And I was like, what is this broadcast television, TV sales? This was in the sales department. Right. So I'm not even close to being on camera at this point. But it was my first foray into understanding what local TV is all about. And it was so exciting.
And once you were in the building, how did you start to maneuver and say, I want to get in the newsroom?
Yeah, it wasn't quickly. I first had to just understand how everything worked, but I would talk to people, and people are typically very generous with their time and explaining what they do, especially if they love what they do. So I was picking a lot of people's brains. And before I even thought about the hosting side and the newsroom side of things, I just realized I wanted to be in a more creative role. Mm-hmm. And so I was paying attention to the sales marketing department, and they were doing some really interesting things. And that's kind of where I this whole journey began as far as getting on television. They were responsible for helping the sales team find creative strategies for their advertisers. So something beyond the spots and dots, as we would say in the biz, 30-second commercials. So these would be integrations. These would be product placement. And I was curious enough that I was like, maybe if I just volunteer my time to them, like if they're short staffed, because the entire entertainment industry, I feel like, is short staffed 90% of the time. So everybody's willing to have a helping hand. So Phil Gonzalez said, you know what? Absolutely. You can come, you can help me at an event, at an activation. This other woman was going on vacation. Do you want to do PowerPoints? So I really went into the sales marketing team, and they liked me enough that eventually that's where I ended. I did interview for a position that became open and they didn't give it to me, and it was soul crushing. But it's just proof that you have to keep coming back if you know you're right for it. So eventually the candidate that they had hired in the sales marketing department didn't last more than 3 months, and I re-interviewed and I got the job. And so from there, that's when I was recognizing that there's this whole integration thing happening, and CBS was very adamant that it's church and state with an advertiser and a news talent. So I became the bridge because I knew how to perform on camera, and I could be a spokesperson on behalf of the station, but also on behalf of the advertiser. And so there was a marriage between the two.
Interesting. You know, they always say, get your foot in the door. I don't think anybody as much as you could say, get the foot in the door. You literally just got in there in the sales department and then worked your way around into that building. I mean, talk about that.
Yeah. Again, networking and just being a people person goes a long way in any industry. And I think being curious and people seeing your curiosity, people like to lean into that. And I'm a very hard worker, and it was always important to me to be like one of the first people to show up to work and the last one to leave. Like, prove that you're in it for the long run, especially as you're starting out, because you have to establish yourself. And if you can make that impression, people don't forget that. And so, you know, just building those relationships and, again, learning as I went, because I didn't know anything. I didn't know lighting. I didn't know much of anything. But you make mistakes and you learn from them and you grow, and you just constantly try and fill the need where the need arises.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did Inside SoCal happen?
That was the strategy. So when Phil and I, that was the director of the marketing department at the time, when we were trying to figure out how to get basically more money from advertisers and come up with really creative solutions, it was that hosted aspect that we kept coming back to, and news not being able to do it and me being able to do it. And we were both like, we need a name. Because people like to have like a show or a theme or something. And he's like, well, it's always going to be different advertisers. It's always going to be a different scenario. So what's a good catch-all? And so I was like, how about Inside SoCal? Because it's Southern California. We're trying to get an inside scoop on it.
Right.
And that it landed in so it stuck. And it stuck in its first iteration. And then it, over the years, kind of transformed into, instead of just being a catch-all, it is an actual program, a short form program that airs every Sunday. And that was only born in COVID. And somehow we launched it then, and found a sponsor to underwrite it. But yeah, it's crazy how some things just either they work or they don't.
So are you still under sales, or are you under the newsroom?
So neither, because I just got a promotion.
Oh, congrats. Let's talk about it.
Thank you. You know, it's funny. So my role over the years has always been to, yes, be the TV host for this unique category on behalf of CBS Los Angeles. But it's also been on the other side of the camera to produce and ideate these kind of marketing campaigns. And so recently, CBS as a whole, news and stations developed an integrated marketing division.
Okay.
And this is basically for all of the CBS stations. And their job is to kind of do what we were doing in LA for all of them. And they tapped me to be the executive producer for all of the integrated marketing content. So I help
Amazing.
stations do what we're doing in LA, which is creatively producing content that does have an advertiser underwriting it in order to generate revenue. So I like to say we keep the lights on at work. So it's, that interesting tandem role of we're still doing some editorial content, and then we're doing some advertorial content, and then we're doing some sales content. So I'm a little bit further away from the news side of things, but there's still that editorial side as far as coverage of local events and people and community.
Can you walk me through a day to day? I know it probably changes, but walk me through what a day is like in your job hosting.
Oh man, you're right. Every day is different, which I love. But typically, let's say we're not filming that day. So if we're not in the field, then I'm not just a one-man band. I have this great team of producers and editors. So basically, I'm looking at footage that was shot, going through my interviews to see what selects make sense to go into inside SoCal. Amy Weisenberg, who's my amazing producer, she'll work through the package and we'll collaborate on that together, and come up with what we think is a really strong package for our editor to start sinking his teeth into. And then I'll review other spots that I might have been involved with on air, in order to finalize them, produce them. It's kind of whatever is needed. Where whatever's about to hit air is something that I'm focusing on. Then, the day when we're in the field, which is always so much fun. It's usually, 4 to 6 hour shoots, and we're all over LA. So you name it, half the time, is commuting to said place. But it's getting together with my team, Amy typically, and Glenn, who's our DP, and we'll have another cameraman, and we'll go and, film our 5-minute inside SoCal piece and then come back and start working on it a little bit. But every day is different, but it's always involving some sort of piece of content.
Is everything pre-recorded then?
Mm-hmm.
So are you ever out live?
No, which, part of me loves the thrill of that, because live is a beast.
It is.
It is a different animal. It is such a skill set too. And I have so much respect for people who can really command that talent. There have been times where I have done live for certain things, but more often than not, it's all post-produced.
What would you say are some skills that people that want to walk in your shoes should develop to have that on-air presence?
I think you really have to learn how to be a good listener in order to be a good interviewer. So practice that and pay attention. You have to be present in the moment for everything that's going on, because otherwise you miss those moments. Because the difference between a good host or reporter or anybody that's on this side of the camera is that they find the moments and they create those moments by listening and then interacting with the back and forth. I think that's probably the biggest, because everything else, your performance, your presentation, how your hair looks, all of that plays a role. But the content, the meat of it, you have to get that right to be good.
Can you give our listeners some interviewing tips that you've gained over the years?
Yeah, I think when I first started doing this, I had all of these questions. I have them on a piece of paper and I would memorize them. And no.
I'm just kidding.
And and I had the flow of how I wanted everything to go. I was so regimented in where I wanted the interview to go that I didn't allow the interview to be what it was going to be.
Yes.
And it's hard to trust yourself sometimes with that. So what I found is that if you can do enough research in advance where you have a really good command of your subject, the person you're talking to, whatever the scenario is, the business that they're in, etc., and know it enough to feel comfortable that you can let all of that go and have an idea of where you want to take the interview, but let it be what it's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes such a good point. For me personally, I'll usually have a couple questions, but be okay to just throw it away if you have to.
Yeah, because you never know what you're walking into, truly. Because everything that you read about or have done research on, that's not that first person perspective. And when you get them in the room, especially, I think another key is spend some time with them before you start interviewing them, because you'll feel their vibe, you'll understand what kind of day they're walking into. You can help make them feel at ease. There's so many things because you also, if they're uncomfortable, you're not going to get a good interview. So you have to be that person that's like a warm friend.
1000%. Growing up, I was in theater as well. And our performance director would say, learn your lines so you can forget them.
Yeah.
And that always stuck with me because it's like, if you are that prepared, you don't even need to rely on that.
Yes, it's so true. And it's invaluable in the moment. It allows you the freedom to really listen and strike up a conversation. And it's important to be curious while you're doing it.
As a segue, it is a bit of a saturated market. How would you say somebody can stand out in this market today?
I think by being the best version of yourself. I tell this whenever I do speaking engagements, I always try and reiterate to people that there's only one you. So find whatever it is that's unique about you and hone in on it. Because that's what makes you special. And that's how you can stand apart, because there is only one you. And we all have interesting stories to share. We all have, interesting, quirky things like me with the computer programming and being from Nebraska. I have used that so much in my persona, this on-camera persona. I make people feel comfortable because typically if you think I'm from Nebraska, you think I'm probably pretty easygoing and nice. Like, that's not like if I were to say I was a New Yorker, you'd probably think, oh, she might be a little bit more, edgy or something. It's interesting how all of these play into what you end up being. So just hone in on what makes you you.
Yeah, and I talk about this. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but every facet of you is what makes you you. So you're not just the girl from Nebraska. You're not just the TV host. You're not just the producer. You're not just the dog mom, whatever it is. You have all of these different things, and that's what makes you that person that shines on air.
Exactly.
Switching gears, I'm sure you've had some amazing moments on air. Is there one moment in particular that just stands out to you?
Oh my gosh. Uh, I mean, there's a couple. So one, I was lucky enough to be the first person to interview Billie Eilish on TV. It was incredible.
Right.
So she and Phineas, we brought them into a half-hour show that we were doing. It was like a pre-Grammy special for CBS. And I had interviewed Phineas a long time ago when he was in high school in a band called the Slightlies.
Oh my goodness.
It was such a fun interview. I remember they were just kids and they wanted to do the interview from the roof of the garage. So I'm sitting down here, they're it was hysterical. But our producer, Robert, had kept in touch with them and Billy was on the rise, and Ocean Eyes had just really captured people's attention on the stream. And I think it was Apple Music that was starting to pay attention to. So anyway, she was on the rise, and the PR team knew it. And I had a feeling. And then when we got into the room and we were filming at, it wasn't No Vacancy. It was Good Times at, oh God, Davy Wayne's. They'll kill me for not remembering the name of it. Good Times at Davy Wayne's. Something like that. It's the Houston Brothers property. And it's this kind of funky vibe. It feels like a speakeasy. You walk through the refrigerator in order to get into it. So it's just a whole thing.
Yeah.
And we set up for it. And Phineas is playing the keys behind, and Billy's just by herself in the front. And she's this, young girl. At the time, she had just turned 15. And she sang Ocean Eyes. And it was the most pure, angelic sound that I'd ever heard. And to witness that in person, like we all walked away from that, like she is going somewhere. And sure enough, I mean, it wasn't, it's fun to look back on that because it's so much, it was such a rich moment, but now knowing what I know is like, it's even bigger. So that was a really
And you
special
did
one.
see something in her.
We all did. And she was so uniquely herself. When we sat down, she kind of had this kind of, I don't know, like she could also be a rapper. Like she just had this edge and kind of coolness to her, but very approachable and self-deprecating and honest. Like she knew she was young. She knew, but she felt what she felt, and she was unapologetic about it.
And unapologetically herself,
Mm-hmm.
which we just talked about is so important.
Truly. And so you can see that's when people shine, because not everybody's going to love you. I mean, I think a lot of people love Billie, but when you're authentically yourself and somebody latches onto that, I mean, the sky's the limit. So it's like if you don't get the job or the role, you might not have been the right person for that job. But when you are, if you have conveyed exactly who you are, it is going to be magic.
What would be some of the challenges you faced in your job? Any bloopers? Anything that you've experienced?
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh gosh, I really hope there's no tape of this, but I had tested to be the traffic reporter for KCAL and
Okay.
KCBS. And, it's funny. Some people just assume that if you have one skill set, it just transfers into another one. So
Right.
because I can be on camera, of course I could do the traffic. Well, that's a whole nother thing. I mean, number one, I wasn't from LA, so I was still trying to like navigate roads and whatnot, but I was terrible at it. But they tried me live a few times on TV, and the last one was just a mess. Because their hits come, every 7 minutes
Right.
in the morning, and I just didn't have a command of it, and I knew it. And I don't think I had enough practice time in front of it, and it was just kind of all the way around, just a hot mess. And afterwards, the GM came into my little cube, and he was like, "I think that's the end of the road for this." And it was mortifying. But you know what? I went home embarrassed, and I knew that I was terrible, and it was just the wrong thing. But I woke up the next morning. The sun came out. I put on my clothes like I always do, and I went back into work. And when you find that you can get through your lowest point, you can get through the embarrassment, you can get through the tough times and come out on the other side, it does wonders for your strength and mental.
It makes you feel like you can try anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the worst thing, if you imagine the worst thing that can happen, as long as it's not death, I mean, you can get through it. You truly can. So I always say it's learn from your mistakes, because you'll learn way more than from your successes.
Is it true that you're a sommelier? How do you pronounce
A sommelier? Yes, yes. I'm not a master sommelier, so let's not confuse things. But during COVID, I was drinking enough wine that I felt like I should probably have some education behind it. And so the International Sommelier Guild was actually doing remote courses. And I thought, well, this would be fun. Why not figure it out? And I had always loved going up to Central Coast, like Santa Barbara County, Los Olivos, San Ynez. And I loved wine. I just didn't know a lot about it, but I had a good palate. I knew that. So I studied for, I don't know, 7 months on the side, just after work, would get out the books and study and learn. And I passed my intermediate sommelier certification. And then I decided, well, maybe I should learn how to make wine. And UC Davis was doing this whole winemaking certification program. And somehow I got accepted into it. So then I learned how to make wine. Again, theoretically, not by trade, but It was fun.
Have you ever seen the movie Sideways?
Oh, yes.
It's such a favorite of mine. Literally, we took like the monologue for our vows for our wedding.
No
That's
way.
how much we love it.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And that movie seriously put the Merlot industry out of business. It's still trying to come back.
Oh, it is still trying to come back. I get the PR releases like, here's what we're doing with Merlot. Merlot's back. So you with your wine, you actually do a lot of wine segments though. So it must come in handy sometimes, right?
It does. It does. And it's a lot of fun, especially when you can kind of geek out for a minute with somebody because there's so much knowledge. I mean, that was the thing. I suppose with any industry, you don't have any idea how much somebody has put into learning their craft. And so whenever I get my hands on a sommelier or a winemaker, it's such a great time to like exercise that muscle a little bit
Yeah.
and let them kind of geek out too, because normally they're trying to just gloss over things because the average person wouldn't know about Brix levels or whatever the case may be, cellar temps, etc. So yeah, it's been fun with those segments.
Do you have a favorite everyday wine? One that somebody could go right now and pick up at the grocery store?
So Stoltman makes this beautiful side label. It's their more kind of natural label, and you've probably seen it before. Love You Bunches. So they make a rosé. They have I think they have an orange, so a skin contact wine and some reds, and that's any one of those. And it's a really good price point.
Yeah.
It's always an easy drinking one and lovely.
Good to know.
Yeah, and what a great name. Love You Bunches.
Right? Exactly. So memorable. Before I let you go, if somebody is wanting to make that move, they want to go to the big city now, they've maybe went to journalism school, they know that this is the path that they want to take, they want to be a host. What's a piece of advice you can give for where they should start?
I think find organizations where you can network. So depending on specifically what you're trying to get into, I often find too women's organizations, women I think are naturally supportive. I mean, especially it used to be a different situation, I think, in the entertainment industry, and that's changed. I've seen it change, and I'm so grateful to see that change. And I think women are nurturers. So if you can find a women's group that you can network and ask questions and be a little bit vulnerable, ask questions you don't know the answers to and know that it's not going to be a stupid question, most likely. That's a good way just to build relationships with people because this industry is relationship driven.
Totally. And there are so many Facebook groups, Hosts in LA, shout out to them.
Yeah.
So many other ones too that somebody can just go on there. They post auditions and just go networking events. It is a great way to start.
Yeah, I think that and keep networking throughout your entire career. It's a big business, but it's a very small world. You run into the same people. Don't burn bridges either. That'll come back to bite you. Try and be, even if you're in bad scenarios, just try and be as much of a professional as you can and get out of it.
I do have some rapid fires for you.
Oh boy.
But I have a little funny story before we talk about these. So I always thought that I had 10 questions. And I just realized today that I've been asking 9 questions. I always had the 10, but for some reason on the first day, I must have used the scissors and cut out the first one. And so I've never asked the first question. So I'm just going to ask the first question.
Oh gosh. Okay.
If I weren't a journalist, I would be blank.
A dancer.
A dancer, really?
Dancing so much. I don't know if I would make it professionally, but I love to dance.
Did you grow up dancing?
I did. Yeah, tap and ballet and modern and jazz. In fact, I went to a dance class earlier today. Shout out to Kinergy. Julian Huff put together this really cool exercise program that's all based around dance.
Wow.
And it is so fun. It's so energizing. You learn just like these 3-minute dances. So it's not this huge memorization thing, which I think is a barrier of entry for a lot of people who want to take dance classes. And it's aerobic. And at the end of it, we did this amazing affirmation she's like, I want to hear you say, I'm strong, I'm resilient, and I'm limitless. And I was like, I love this place.
So cool. I'm a dancer too, so I'm going to check that out.
Yes.
Your coffee order.
Oh, well, it's pretty simple. It's normally just drip coffee, but room for a lot of oat milk. It's like 80% oat milk.
It's oat milk with a splash of coffee.
Pretty much.
Your favorite travel destination?
France.
What part?
Well, I'll say Paris. One of my best friends lives there, Christine, and whenever I could be anywhere in the world with her and having a great time, but she lives in Paris.
Oh, I love Paris. I got engaged in Paris.
Oh,
so it's in my heart too. Your favorite restaurant?
Anna Jacques Thai in Sherman Oaks.
I know this place. Is there another location?
Not that I know of, but it's been around for a long time. And Justin, the owner's son, just recently kind of reinvigorated it. And so it's been on top
I've
lists.
heard of it on top lists.
It's insanely good. And it's there's a vibe, there's music pumping, and there's a great wine list, which I'm excited about. And by wine list, I mean it's like a Bible of wine. But it's an event. Every time you go, it feels like an event. Like it's just good energy.
I always hear so many amazing things. I'm going.
Good.
I'm going. Something people often get wrong about you.
Well, I think they underestimate me. But if we're just going with something specific, they think I grew up on a farm because I'm from Nebraska. Get that a lot.
Gosh, that's so weird.
Yeah. They're like, you're from Nebraska? So did you grow up on a farm? Nope, I sure didn't. And then they have nowhere to put me.
That's so funny. The last movie, TV show, or book you watched and loved?
City of Gold documentary. So this one I fell onto, and it was right. So it was during the fires. And I was so overwhelmed by how the community was coming together to support one another through that awful January and still. And I stumbled upon, and I had known of Jonathan Gold when he was alive, and he's a restaurant critic and all these things. And I had heard that he had done this great documentary, City of Gold, but I never watched it. And so I finally put it on. I think you can stream it on Amazon. And it's a love letter to LA through food. And it is the most beautiful depiction of this city that I think anybody has ever done.
I love food documentaries too.
Oh, you have to watch it. It is something else. And Lori Ochoa, who's his wife, who I got to travel with to Italy a year after Jonathan passed. And we went on this unbelievable trip with Nancy Silverton and Ruth Reichel. And I was with Culinary Gods, and she would talk about how much Jonathan adored this or that. And so I felt like I had this firsthand experience. So it just meant that much more
Nancy
too.
Silverton.
I know. I was with the big girls and it was epic.
Wow. That's amazing. A snapshot of an ordinary everyday moment that gives you true joy.
My mornings with my dog, Caesar. Oh, gosh. And it's so after he's fed, he's so excited to eat first thing in the morning, as all dogs are, animals are. And we go outside so that I can take him to do his business. And I'm a morning person, so it's usually very quiet on my street, and the birds are chirping, and whether it's, a little cool breeze, it's just, I always relish those moments because it just feels like the start of something really beautiful every day.
The quiet time.
It is. Yeah.
Of that. If you could switch lives with one person for a day, who would it be?
I think it would be Alicia Moore, Pink.
Really?
Yeah. So I know this sounds crazy, but I mean, this woman has this unbelievable voice, and it's very visceral, and she's so strong and powerful. And like, what would it be like to be on stage in front of tens of thousands of people, to be able to perform and know that you have this gift? And then if you haven't been to one of her concerts before, spoiler alert, she basically harnesses up and flies around the crowd.
Seen the videos. Yeah.
So not only do you get to perform, you get to fly, and she's a winemaker.
Oh, really?
So you could potentially be in the vineyard in the morning and then go do a concert. So I think that sounds like an epic day.
It sounds like you need to meet her and hang out with her too.
Yes. All these things. So Alicia, call me.
One thing you're deeply grateful for right now.
The wisdom from my grandmother.
Talk about that.
Oh, gosh. Let me see if I can talk about it without crying. She's been on my mind a lot lately. She lived to 105 and passed 6-7 years ago. I don't know. Time is fleeting. But she probably is the most influential person on my life, in my life. Was such just an incredible force of nature. She taught me empathy. She was incredibly smart and loved philosophy and loved kind of dissecting human nature. She was very proper, and she knew how to command a conversation and to find those moments of give and take, but also fill the space when you could tell somebody was uncomfortable and didn't have anything to say. She was generous and loving and beautiful, always perfectly put together till the very end. She just taught me so much about being a woman, being a human, and kind of being a professional of life.
Thank you for sharing that. It sounds like she really inspired you in the way that you are today.
And not just me. I mean, at her funeral, there were so many people whose lives she affected positively. I mean, she was that person for so many, and it's such a gift that she was able to give that much of herself to so many others.
And 105.
I know, right? I'm so lucky. I'm so blessed that I had all of that time, because I feel like in my 30s, when I was really developing, because I don't think in my 20s I was developing as a woman as much as I was in my 30s and as a professional. And so to be able to have her as a confidant and to run things past her, and life gets more complicated as you get older, and to be able to work through things with her, what a gift. What a true gift.
Amazing. Last question. If you could go back in time to when you first started your career, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Nobody knows much more than you do when it comes to what something being good or not. So what I mean by that is I think I felt like I had imposter syndrome because I did not graduate from journalism school. I took a lot of classes when I got out of college and wanted to get into this profession. But I felt like I must have missed something, like there was some key to success and everybody knew it except for me. And the reality is, in life, we're all just trying to figure it out. So just believe in your instincts and trust that gut feeling.
The reality is we all have imposter syndrome.
Right?
All of us.
Whether we like to admit it or not, it's true. And so you just have to have the confidence to be like, all right, I'm just going to go for it anyway.
And if they don't like you, let them.
Exactly. You can't control that.
You can't control it. Erica, this was so great. Where can people find you if they want to follow you or watch you on air in LA?
Oh, thank you. Well, you can find me. All my socials are host Erica Olsen. And then if you want to tune in, Sundays, Inside SoCal airs on CBS at 8:55 a.m. It's that little 5-minute break.
And she didn't grow up on a farm, you folks.
I did not. And you are not a weather girl.
And I am not a weather girl. Amen.